Are there advantages to aging? Yes, I am Debbi-Jo Horton, and welcome to Advantages to Aging. Join my guests and I as we discuss aging and what makes for a healthy lifestyle, which results in a quality life. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Podcast Land. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Memories with a Beat. Today, I have with me, I'm going to call her my friend, Debbi-Jo Horton, and she is with Neora. And we were in a networking group, and I started using some of her products. And I was like, wait a minute, I think this stuff actually works. I could actually feel like my eyes tightening underneath when I was trying to like improve any bagginess or fine lines around my mouth or anything like that. And I love the packaging, which is kind of stupid, but it really does feel so special and sophisticated when it comes to you at your doorstep. And so, Debbi, if you don't mind, will you tell my audience a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you're doing, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. So I am Debbi-Jo Horton, as Tiffany said, and I absolutely fell in love with this company for a number of reasons. But one of it is because it was founded on make people better. And all my life, I have been a big proponent of personal development and constant improvement, being 1% better tomorrow or today than I was yesterday. And so that really resonated with me. And they really focus on the personal aspect. So it's not just about making your skin look better or your hair feel better or your body feel better. It's about helping to make you a better version of yourself. And I just absolutely fell in love with it, so much so that I sold my international tax practice to
Oh my
do this,
goodness.
I guess what you could say, full time, as long as full time is like less than 20 hours a week.
Well, I love Neora Debbi-Jo, but I love you. And today we're celebrating because it's somebody's birthday. They say it's your birthday. Na 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 na. I love to call my family when it's their birthday and I play that song really loud. But I can't play it on here because of copyright. So you guys have to put up with my singing. But Debbi-Jo Horton, you are the birthday girl today and you are turning 60. And I think that's awesome and amazing because you are the silver lining queen. And over these last 60 years, you have learned how to see those silver linings, how to be positive, and just all that time having conversations with different people. You've learned a lot of advantages, a lot of tips about aging and how to see the silver lining with aging. So I am super ecstatic that you are my birthday girl guest today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited about it. And yes, I know sometimes I sit there and go, 60? How on earth did that happen? Like, I still feel like I'm in my 40s. I probably still act like I'm in my 40s, but I love to celebrate.
So, little birthday girl, tell us, what are your big plans? How are you celebrating this birthday?
Well, so Tiffany, here's what I do. The number of years that you're turning,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
60, I have been celebrating for 60 days already. I am
Snap.
celebrating my birthday today, and I will
Yes.
be celebrating for the next 60 days after my birthday. So I'll be celebrating for almost a third of the year. Actually, a
That
little
is how
more
you
than a third.
Yeah. That's how you celebrate a birthday, man. That's so awesome. So you've done that all the time?
Well, not
You
all the time, but again, you sometimes learn from other people and learning that life is sometimes shorter than you would like it to be. I like to celebrate. And so I want to say probably 20 years ago, a friend of mine said that they celebrate that number of whatever years that they're turning,
Yeah.
that number of days after their birthday. So I just added to the front of it.
Yes, girl. Well, that's exciting. That means that I get to celebrate for 82 days, 83 because the day
Yeah.
of. So,
Yeah.
wow.
And I
All
kind of
right.
turn it around too. So I'm not expecting for all that time people to be giving me gifts. I love to be
Sure.
able to give away gifts to everyone. So for the last 60 days, I've been giving a little something to somebody. Maybe it's material, maybe it's not. And then today I will do something really big and really special. And then I will still continue to give things away for the next 60 days as well.
That is so awesome. I love that. So it's going to be me in 20 years when I'm talking about being 60. I'll be like, 20 years ago, I had this guest on my podcast and she said she celebrated before and after. So I'll be echoing you in 20 years.
Well, we'll celebrate my 80th then.
Okay, that sounds perfect. You're going to have a lot of celebrating then.
Yeah, you think?
It's like all year.
Well, so I've always wanted to, don't know why, since I was a kid, I want to live to 117. So
Okay.
I
That's
will be
very realistic
celebrating
these days.
for an entire year.
Hey, I think that's a great goal. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, so you are with Neora and you're up in Rhode Island, is that right? No, you're Massachusetts?
Yep. Nope, I'm in Rhode Island. I crossed the border and I now live in Rhode Island.
Okay, okay. I love when the last episode of your podcast that I listened to, and you guys were talking about actually bras and supporting the girls. But I love the R that you were like, and tell me a little bit more about that bra. And
That
because
Boston accent.
yes, yes. So you have a podcast, like I just said. What is your podcast about, Debbi-Jo?
It's about the advantages to aging. Everybody talks about the disadvantages to aging, but let's face it, we are all getting older. If we're not here anymore. And so rather than focus on all the things that don't work the way they used to, it's important to really focus on the things that we can do and we can share because I really believe in abundance. And so sharing that abundance with others, your trials and tribulations and how you manage to get through it, it's just really about those little tips that we can share with others to help them make their transition that much easier.
Yeah, yeah. I love that my grandpa always said, continue to learn, always keep learning. And I think that that's something that we do as we age. And I think there are a lot of advantages. I mean, ask anybody over 40 if they'd like to go back to their 20s. Most people would say no. I think once you get over 40, you start to care a little bit less about what other people think and you're a little bit more confident in who you are and you do have all those little truths, those little facts that have built up over time that you can kind of rely back on. I know one of your episodes was a lady speaking about, oh, Linda Lindsay, I love her voice. She was speaking about past friendships or past relationships and how sometimes those are there for a season. And oddly enough, right after actually listening to that episode, I had my own falling out with a good friend, and I just kind of had to take some of that advice and go, you know what, she was here for a season and maybe for whatever reason, and I'm telling you what, God ripped that person out of my life like a band-aid. He did not say, like, here's a gentle transition out of this person's life. It was, he ripped that band-aid off and she was gone.
I love it. I love it.
So, it is all those things that we learn on the way. And I also love that all your episodes are so short. Like we're all busy. We've ever got a million things vying for our attention. If you only have a 15-minute drive to the grocery store, hey, you can get a Debbi-Jo episode in, advantages to aging, and, learn a little something just on your simple way to the grocery store. So I think that's awesome. Keep doing the interviews, keep that content coming our way. So today, I want you to share with my audience what song you picked, who it's by, and then how you connect with that song, Debbi-Jo.
So this might sound a little not so upbeat, but mine is the Tim McGraw song, Live Like You Were Dying. And I may get a little bit emotional because it does have a great deal of emotion behind it for me. It's not necessarily about dying, it's really about living. None of us have the guarantee of how long we're going to be here. To me, it's more about overcoming any fears that you have to go and accomplish the things that you want to. Those things that people maybe tell you you could never do that. Don't listen to them. How do they know? They're letting their limiting beliefs limit you. So don't let that happen. So I love when he says, when he got the news and he said that this might be the real end. Well, every breath we take could actually be the real end. And you don't want to be drawing that last breath and say, if only I had, you fill in the blanks. So I try to really live my life that way, because so many times, so too often actually, people are gone before you know it, and not always for a good reason. So it's one thing to have a friendship ripped away from you because you had a falling out. It's a
Mm-hmm.
totally different thing if someone's ripped out of your life because of a death.
I agree. I think it's interesting that you brought up that when people are dying, they say I wish I would have, or you don't want to be saying I wish I would have. And I'll tell you what, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and I listen to some for entertainment and some for, learning and all that kind of stuff. And that's probably a reoccurring theme on some of those podcasts is, because I do listen to some self-help ones, and they're saying go for it. Do it messy. Do it today. Just go for it, because a lot of times when people are on their deathbeds, that's one of the things they say, I wish I would have tried this. I wish I would have whatever. And my son was actually saying, I have this great idea, Mom. What do you think? And I said, yeah. I said, go for it, because the last thing that you want to be thinking in 5 years from now or 10 years from now is, I wish I would have tried that. Yes, go try it. There's nothing wrong, and there's nothing wrong with failure. No judgment here. So I completely agree with that. And I think it's fun that you're picking a song that, we may break into a tear or two, just simply because music affects us all differently. But also, music is that thing that gets us through some of those hard times. I had a guest say on a previous episode that music is medicine for modern day living. And I just, your heart hurts. And actually you were talking about, being on your deathbed, and I was listening to another song earlier today, and the real behind of the song is his mom was passing, and his mom said, it's okay to cry, it's okay to fall apart. Sometimes the only way to heal a broken heart is when you fall apart. And so I just thought that those were powerful words. And sometimes we use music to bring out those emotions, to kind of fester that sadness. Like when someone says, I need a good cry, and they put a movie on, it's kind of the same thing with a song. So I think that that's fine, that this may not be the most upbeat reaction to a song, but I think it's very real and very relevant for my listeners. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, I didn't. That's why I said I was going with it. And almost every song, whether it's a song that talks about dying or talks about living, is filled with emotion, whether it's yours or the songwriters or the singers. And every time you listen to it, you might experience that song differently. And this song definitely does that for me. I mean, I've had a lot of deaths in my family, and I have a child who struggles with cancer. And so that totally gets me going.
Mhm.
But, the reality is that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Life is messy, right? There's no such thing as a perfect life. And so if you understand that life can be messy and you don't mind getting messy, then I think you get more out of life, because you don't have to have everything perfect. You know that you can get a do-over. And maybe it's not like immediate, but trust me, God has a way of bringing that back around so you can try it again.
If you didn't learn the lesson the first time, he'll bring it back to you.
Exactly.
or if at first you don't succeed, try again. Yeah. So the first time that you can remember hearing this song, or if you're driving in the car, I mean, where are you transported to? Who do you think of most times, or, you know, where do you go?
So the first time I heard this song, now you're totally going to make me cry. It was shortly after my brother had committed suicide.
Okay.
And
Sorry for your loss.
so it was like it broke that dam wide open. I bawled my eyes out for weeks after hearing it.
Mhm.
But then miraculously, again, I heard the song come on the radio, and instead of turning it off like I oftentimes would,
Mhm.
the line that says, I gave forgiveness I'd been denying. Oh my God,
Mm.
that one hit me so hard, because I realized I wasn't forgiving him for taking his life. And what it
Mhm.
did was it gave me a different perspective, understanding how much pain he was in to have gone through that. And then not only did I didn't need to forgive him for him, I needed to forgive him for me, not just for the fact that he took his life, but I kept saying over and over and over again, as many of us do, what if I had done something differently? And
Mm.
so that kind of really sank in and said, you know what? Sometimes we don't get it right. And sometimes we don't get a chance to try to do it over again, but we can learn from those things. And so it's not just about the mistakes you might make, but learning from the mistakes that other people make and not ever, ever, ever thinking that you're alone in this because you're never alone.
Amen. I know I try to post that on my Facebook page somewhat often. You need to call someone, you need to have a drink, you need to go for a car ride. Give me a call. I don't want anybody to ever think that they're alone in it. It's interesting that I would encourage you not to be, too hard on yourself. What could you have done differently? Those kind of things, which I'm sure you've come to terms with for the most part. But, I watch Long Island Medium, love me a little Teresa Caputo. And lots of times in her readings, the people will, that have passed from a suicide, they will come forward and speak to their loved ones and say, there was nothing that you could have done differently. And really, I think that that's a lot of times, even like when someone's been murdered or somebody had a heart attack or somebody slipped and fell, car accident, and the person that lives says, what could I have done differently? How could I have prevented this? And the loved one coming forward just says, it was my time. And a lot of people want to get so nervous about, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. But the reality is, I think that when it's your time, he just finds you where you are. People die in the strangest ways sometimes, and it just means their time was up. And so their job was finished here on earth. So whatever job your brother had to do, I guess his time was up and he had done that job. And so sorry for your loss. But I'm happy that you can hear this song now and that you were able to gain that forgiveness for him, for yourself in the matter.
Yeah.
I think that's very powerful.
And it still brings you back to don't wait.
Mm.
Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Be as messy as you need to be, but do it.
Yeah. Yeah. My son just lost two friends. He's only 20, and he lost two friends this summer. One at 3:30 in the morning, so who knows what was going on, and another one was an athlete and just dropped dead. And it doesn't matter. Like, it just feels like, doesn't matter how healthy you eat or how crappy you eat, or of course we need to do our part and not be completely irresponsible. But
Exactly.
sometimes you look at the situation, you go, "Jeepers, that person did everything right and they're still gone."
Well, when people say things like that, especially someone who's been super healthy and they, get a disease and die, or they die of a heart attack, and they say, "Oh, there is a reason that I'm not healthy." No, 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 no. You have no idea whether or not that person would have died sooner
Good
because they
point.
weren't healthy. So, you need to be taking care of yourself and doing what's best for you
Yeah.
all the way through. So, the health of your mind, the health of your body, the
Amen.
health of your community. The other thing this song really reminds me of is to be embracing your community and accepting help when it's offered. So I lost my
Mm,
husband to cancer, and I know that people were constantly saying, "What can I do?" And of course, like during before he passed away and then after he passed, people kept saying that because they really didn't want to do something I didn't necessarily need. But the reality was I had no idea because I was barely taking care of myself. But what was really amazing was I suddenly had this mind shift, and it was, even if the help they can give me is to say a prayer, tell them that. Like, tell them that because it makes
mm,
me feel good. It makes them feel good. I had a freezer full of prepared foods, which I kept thinking when he was on, he had a feeding tube.
Mm.
So he had a feeding tube. He wasn't eating any of that, and I was barely eating anything. And I was like, I'm looking at this freezer full of food, and I'm like, what on earth? Well, after he passed, all that freezer food came out, and it went into this huge spread because there were constantly people coming through. And
Mm.
because it was there, I did pick. I did get food. I did get sustenance. And so, whether it's just saying a prayer, being there for them to cry on, it just reminded me that your health, your mental health, really is very dependent on the health of your community. So, looking at the people that you surround yourself with is something that you should be doing all the time. And your life changes, and you might outgrow some of those people in that community. It's important that you're filling that space with someone who can help you grow even more.
I just love you.
I love you too, Tiff.
You're just like the queen of silver linings. I really love that. I love how you just spun all of that in a really positive light. Um, I don't know. I just loved it. Okay. So I when you chose this song, the first thing that came to my mind is we had to look up Fu Manchu when this song was really popular. Do you remember? And I was like, wrote a bowl named Fu Manchu. What is that? Because the story has always been so important to me. And so I thought that was kind of funny. I believe it's a mustache, right? Should I look it up? I'll look it up
I
really
have
quick.
no idea. I don't have to look
Manchu.
those things up because to me it just was the name of the bull. The more important thing was the fact that he did ride that bull, and again, you can equate that to life.
Okay, so Fu Manchu is a fictional villain. So there we go. That seems like an appropriate name for a bull, I suppose.
It is. And the fact that he went 2.7 seconds, that's not a lot of time.
It's not, but
And
in bull riding, I think that it is.
it is a lot of time. In bull riding, you're right. But if you equate that again to life, it's like, okay, I can hang on for 2.7 seconds
Mm.
until the ride is over and we can get to either the hospital or up to the podium to accept your first place award.
Well, and lots of times, don't you think a lot of our trials and tribulations, in the grand scheme of our full length of life, are about 2.7 seconds?
Yeah.
They feel like the end of the world when you're in it. And then you look
Yeah,
back and you go, oh,
that 2.7 seconds feels more like 27 hours or
yes.
days, depending on what it is that you're going through.
Yes, I hear you. Yep, I completely agree with that.
Debbi-Jo with Neora. You know what our brand partners love the most about their Neora business? They can do it from anywhere. Think about it. Haven't you always wanted to have your own schedule, be your own boss, maybe even have a global business and be able to run it from your favorite coffee shop or lounging by the pool or seaside, not having to go into the office? We make sure that all of our brand partners have all of the tools they need to run their business while fitting it into their busy lives. So if that's something that you've been curious about, what it might be like for you to be able to do life on your own terms, then I think we need to chat.
I also really love in this song that he was talking about, maybe he was blowing off time with his dad, but all of a sudden that year wasn't a problem. He had all the time in the world for those people who really loved him and really cared about him and wanted to spend that time with him. So I think that's super impactful. I wish that my son, I know I keep bringing him up, sorry, but that he would get the memo.
I know. Well, that's the other thing too, is like when you're younger, you think you have all the time in the world.
Yes.
And my son was diagnosed at the age of 25
Hmm.
with a disease that usually doesn't hit you until you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s. So, talk about putting things in perspective, even
Mm-hmm.
if you are in your 20s, is you are not guaranteed your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever it is you think you're going to live to. I'm not saying, be irresponsible, but
Right.
make those make those hours, days, weeks, months, years count
Mm-hmm.
in building something that you can look back on and say, this is my legacy. Not that, oh, well, I wasted my 20s. I started to make some improvements in my 30s, and the next thing I knew, I was diagnosed with some deadly disease that I may or may not recover from. It's about making those choices in the moment that are right for you, no matter what your age is, knowing that it could be the last decision you make, but not being morbid about it, just being upbeat and responsible.
When you just said not waiting to, become the person that, we'll, I think a lot of times we talk about like our higher self or, how do we be that 1% better tomorrow or today versus yesterday. And I like that he said that in the song. I became a friend would like to have. And then he also speaks later about being a good husband. And I think that that's important, but I think that you're right that do it now. Don't wait for a reason to do it. The reason is those people to do that now, to be that person, that they can count on, that they can confide in, that they can, cry on their shoulder, and you can be a support to them, or just you guys can be friends. So I think that that's important too. That's a good point. I think that, what is the saying? Don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today.
Exactly. Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. My
Mm-hmm.
late husband always used to say, make hay while the sun shines. And meaning that, there's a lot of stuff that you can put off for those rainy days. But when the sun is
Mm-hmm.
shining, when things are going right, is when you should be really setting your legacy. What do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for always putting things off and being, a Debbie Downer? Not to play on my name, but 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 to be
Okay, wait, I just have to interrupt you then. I was just gonna say, Debbi-Jo, what do you want your legacy to be? And then you said Debbie Downer, and I kind of forgot that those two go hand in hand, unfortunately. Which you are the extreme opposite. Yeah.
I can have my moments and
That's
be that
funny.
Debbie Downer, because I having the background as a CPA, you're supposed to be looking at all of the things that could go wrong, not to dissuade somebody from doing it, but to help prepare them for what happens if that happens. Let's
Mhm.
plan some scenarios of helping to get out of that or around it or through it. Most often it's through it, because
Yeah.
as much as we would like to avoid those things, as I said before, life can be messy. And so as long as
Yeah.
you know what you want out of life, and what direction, at least if you're heading in the right direction and not doing a complete turnaround, you're making progress. And really
Yeah.
it's about the making of the progress. It's the journey. It's the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that this song kind of says that. This song, right? I think it puts it on a shorter timeline, right? Like he's saying, I wasn't the person I wanted to be. I became the person I wanted to be. I did all these things. I was living like I was dying.
Well, and it's again living like you're dying, meaning do it now, do it with integrity, do it with
Hmm.
pride, because you want. I think one of the favorite things that he says in this song is, I loved deeper.
Mm.
And it was like, with the losses that I've had in my life, and some of them I still grieve
Hmm.
for every day. But the reality is, we can all love deeper. Loving deeper means that you hurt more,
Hmm.
but the joy is that you loved that deep, that you gave so much of yourself away. What you get back is even
Yeah.
more. Like, you never, ever, ever run out of love.
I absolutely dread losing somebody close to me. I've lost my grandmother, and that was hard, but we weren't geographically close, which made our relationship not as close or as tight as it could have been. I mean, I loved her to death and she was young and vibrant and, all that good stuff. But I hear that from everybody that you don't really get over it ever. You just learn how to deal with that void or whatever, So
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you've had so much loss in your life. I can't imagine. I don't want to imagine.
It does make you stronger. And as I said, in retrospect, I live a very different life today, having gone through that loss, than I think I would have,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
so often we take so many things for granted. And I would love to say I don't take anything for granted, but that's not true because we're human and we're not perfect. But I do realize
Sure.
rather quickly when I have, and then I try to make amends for that. So, for those of you who still have children living with you, you know how difficult sometimes that can be. When they are an adult and they live with you, it can be even more frustrating because they should know better than to leave that there or to do this or to do that. Because I was getting rather annoyed with my son who lives with me. And then I realized, well, wait a minute. He is dealing with constant pain. He is dealing with mortality. He is dealing with all these things, and yet he can still get up
Yeah.
every single day. Most days put a smile on his face, no matter how much pain he's in, and still go off to work. So I have to say that, having said that and knowing how much pain he's
Mm.
in, anytime I
Yeah.
do something and I get hurt and I go like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is so incredibly painful." I go, "Shut the F up. This is nothing." This is nothing compared to what other people go through. And I think that was probably one of the things that I remember the most about when my husband and I were waiting for the news of his latest x-rays, knowing that it probably was not good news. There
Mhm.
was this young woman who was probably in her 30s or 40s that got wheeled by us, and she was in agony. I mean, she was so twisted up in pain and just crying. And
Mm.
he just put his hand on my arm and said, "There, but for the grace of God, go I. I have
Mm.
lived a good, long life.
Mm.
If the news is that this is the end, I'm ready."
Mm.
But that young woman, who knows what she's going to have to endure in order to
Mhm.
have as long a life as I have had.
Mhm.
And hearing that from somebody who is usually very negative has taught me two things. One is that there is always, always someone worse off than you are, and that you can change. No matter what your situation is, change starts in your own heart and in your own head. So if
Yeah.
you believe that you can find that silver lining, you will. You will.
Yeah. Well, it's like I tell my kids, if you say you can't or you say you can, you're right.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah.
Be your
Awesome.
own best friend, not your own worst enemy.
Oh, seriously, right? Seriously. Well, was there anything more you wanted to add about this song?
Nope. Only that if I know I need a good cry, I will put that on and I'll have it on a loop.
Yep.
Do whatever crying I need to do and say, okay,
Yep.
put your big girl panties on and let's get it done.
Yep. I always say that to my friends. I'm like, listen, you can cry about this and you can feel crappy for a while, but you don't get to stay here.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of those.
You want to stay for 5 minutes, but not 5 years.
That's right. Amen to that.
Do you think one of the biggest advantages to aging is all the knowledge we gain along the way? Me too. What did you learn today? Share with me in my Facebook group with the same name as this podcast, Advantages to Aging. Now hit subscribe so you don't miss all the tips to come in future episodes.